Hi guys, it's great to be here and thank you for spending some of your time at MadFest with myself and Ian. Been There, Done That's a bit of a different type of business. We're a community-based business that harnesses experts to help our clients solve their toughest problems. And for the last 7 years, we've been developing tools and frameworks, training our clients and running workshops that prove time and time again that when we give ourselves space to integrate and define problems from diverse perspectives, the outcomes are significantly more powerful, impactful, and creative. That might sound like the antithesis of a world that needs solutions more than ever before, and surprisingly analog, probably in a festival that will surely be dominated by AI. But Ian and I are here to talk about how a structured and inclusive strategic moment of pause and a reframing can unlock new paths to growth. We do have a few flashing images, so just be aware. So there is a storm raging around us, and so really this year's MadFest theme was a bit of a gift because we're about finding that pause. And the scale of that storm is really huge, and the complexity of navigating ourselves through it, around it, and away from it can feel like an impossible task. And increasingly, as people in the marketing function, you are the point where all of those different weather fronts tend to meet. And it's not just like one at a time, like this timeline would suggest. Like weather systems, they're connected and create the sort of feedback loops in our professional, societal, and cultural atmosphere that make them really difficult to tackle. So whether it's peak globalization and supply chain fragility, or pandemics and shifts in working patterns, or war and the cost of living, it feels like everything, everywhere, all at the same time. And these complex and wicked interrelationships impact every human on the planet. And as professionals who are required to decode that impact of those events, it can feel hard to get ahead of what's coming next and anticipating the change that will inevitably result in. Klaus Schwab talks about this in his book, The Fourth Industrial Revolution, and if you haven't read it, I highly advise you to, because there's never been a time of greater promise or potential peril. Now, for us humans to feel both those things at once, both the peril and the promise, it's difficult for us. Despite our ingenuity, we humans are still undone by the fact that the more sophisticated parts of our brains are hijacked by the reptilian systems that are designed to keep us alive. It's the ingrained reaction that we don't think about that's the enemy of being able to figure things out, particularly the things that we've never seen before. And it's that assumption that to do the same thing, even when all the stimulus is telling us that we haven't encountered these things before, holds us back from that promise. So a big question is, how do we stop that response inside our own business? If we want to embrace the promise, one thing is certain. What's got us here is not going to get us there. In fact, according to IBM's top CEO worries for a report this year, the risk of standing still is now greater than the risk associated with change. And yet, we still feel like we're probably standing still. So it's ever more essential to take that metaphorical step back and ask ourselves, so what is going to get us there? The good news is, I think there's something inside all of us that we don't often tap into that can help us. It's not a new technology, but it is an undervalued skill that everybody has, a skill that's often the difference between good and great, winners and losers, innovators, and those that are more comfortable with the status quo. A skill that enables us to find some calm in the storm in order to figure out how to get ahead of it. And that skill is defining problems better. Defining problems sounds so small, but it is in fact the only real way to unlock new opportunities. For a moment, I want you to consider two leaders. One strides into the room and tells the team he knows what they need to do and assigns jobs and gets everyone off and running. And everybody goes off, scurrying around, only to find that nothing has changed. Nothing has moved on, and the struggle remains the same as when said leader entered the room. Now I want you to imagine a different type of leader, the leaders that we all probably need to be in today's world. They come into the room and they put the struggle that they are facing in the middle of the room, and they ask the question, what's really going on here? The team gathers round, curious to know what the real problem is, and the room is focused on understanding rather than answering and proving assumptions. They use their different perspectives and align on the real problem and feel motivated and galvanized to solve that problem in a new and better way. We've all got leaders who've done that to us, and who inhibit our ability to kind of look at things from different perspectives and really understand what that problem is. And one of those leaders is wasting that precious time and energy and money of his team in the business, and the other is providing focus, collaboration, and encouraging the potential within the team. And yet, despite the need for us all to look and define problems better, businesses are still rushing in to solution mode. Ian.
Hello. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Morning, everyone. Yeah, I think for me, problem definition or the urge to get to a solution is a little bit like school classrooms, right? The teacher asks a question and all the hands go up quickly. I want to answer it. And I think that happens in the boardroom as well, in major organizations. Everyone wants to be seen to be the one that has the solution quicker than anyone else. And I think, to Nikki's point, it's really understanding what the problem is, right? That critical thinking of pressing the pause button and understanding what the true problem is. Because I think if you leap too quickly to the solution, you then start using bias, group thinking, what we've done before, and rushing to the solution because you think the speed and the agility is absolutely everything. But actually, you will lose a lot of time if the critical issue or the critical opportunity isn't that well defined. So yes, I liken the boardroom to a 9-year-old school classroom.
As Mr. Miyagi says, the answer is only important if you ask the right questions. And one of the things that we're increasingly aware of is how little we question what we're doing or why we're doing it. And I think what we all need to start to do is love problems a little bit more. Stop seeing them as negative. Start to love them, because when we love them, we're naturally more curious about what has created them in the first place, and we're more excited to figure out where they can lead us. And I think for the creatives in the room, the worst thing that you can ever be given is an answer and told to go and execute it. The best thing you can be given to unleash your creativity is a really juicy problem that you want to get your head into. Truth is, problems are just opportunities hidden from view, so spending some time up front defining them enables brands and businesses to get ahead of the curve. And it enables us to focus on that promise. So this is a masterclass. So I'm going to give you a few charts here and a few tools that help you to kind of think about problem definition in a very different way. Think about defining problems not just as a task, but as a whole system and way of thinking, and a way of thinking that is going to enable us to really rise to the challenges that we're about to sort of step into, whether it's climate crisis, whether it's DE&I, whatever it might be. Defining problems is going to be really important. It's a powerful tool in a new style of leadership that encourages organisational behaviours that are essential. A leadership style that's less top-down, more distributed and diverse, and one where we don't try and solve problems in splendid isolation, fueled by a belief that having the answer is the only way to get recognition. As you see, we go up this pyramid. There's some other sort of areas that you need to focus on. Your growth mindset, not a fixed mindset. And that means approaching things with that curiosity, collaboration, challenge ourselves. Don't be afraid to ask questions of the most senior people in the room if you don't think they're right. And the most senior people in the room need to listen to you, because you've probably got more knowledge about what is going on in the world than they do. Really try to make the new connections between different perspectives. And I think this is really important in defining problems. When we bring in different perspectives, that challenge and that connection really, really allows us to get to the deep nub of that problem. One of the things that's really, really important is the way in which we question. So don't just ask the same old questions of the same old problems. Start to step back and give yourself new ways of questioning. So we talk about first principle questioning, Socratic questioning, and systems thinking to really start to build a bigger picture of what is going on. This is the way that we tend to approach things, and this is something that you can all do. This is not hard, and it's very much a human response to how to think about what a problem is. We call it SOLVE, and it's a 5-step process, and it's a very, very simple tool. I've tested it on my kids, on my mum, on Ian. and it works. We've done about 500 of these sessions, so we know it works and anyone can do it. In simple terms, what Solve is just watching how people have approached this and codifying it. So it's how humans do this stuff but might not have written it down. All we've done is write it down. So it's unconscious competence made conscious. More than a process, it's a creator of a space where interrogation is the name of the game. And the letters stand for a series of shifts that you're going to make and reframes that enable us to look at our struggle from different altitudes. So if we start with the S, we're really looking at your situation, the situation that you're in. What's the truth of that situation and where are you trying to get to? Because we can't get there if you don't know what there actually looks like. The O has really challenged us then to look at the obstacles that are getting in the way of where we want to get to. What's really, really holding us back, and what do we see as opportunity spaces that are opening up? That's probably where your category is and what you're looking at. The really exciting piece, though, is when you get into the landscape. That L is where we open up culture, and we start to put that lens of culture on what is happening in the world and where those problems really lie. We often get confused about problems. We think that we're solving a business problem. If you try and solve a business problem, you don't grow. If you try and solve a consumer problem, that's where growth exists. V is that viewpoint. So you can find a problem, but do you have a right to solve it? And we see this all the time. People trying to solve problems that really they don't have a right to solve, or stepping into that problem space in a very inauthentic way. So really understanding what your viewpoint is super important. And then we get to E, and that is our end frame. That is a problem statement that we're looking to solve. Thank you. Now I want you to think about it another way. This is what Solve process really does for you. And this is where I kind of go, when you're in these sorts of situations, what you're trying to do is move yourself up in altitude. We very often stay in a river of thinking and we're looking at a problem from a very specific perspective. It's really important to step away and to look at this from a different angle. So if you take this picture, for example, you can't really see what's happening until you start to pull away and see what sort of atmosphere you're in and potentially where is that storm coming from. So really learning to kind of like not just stay in your perspective, but to walk in other people's perspectives, invite that perspective in and really lift yourself above where you're sitting is the thing that's going to give you a much better view. I think as well, when we focus on problems like that, when we use frameworks, we start to create a language for business that's very different and a type of collaboration inside business that's very different. And I think business that focuses on the right problems is going to outperform those that don't. But that's the theory. And Ian is one of our clients who has put that theory into practice over multiple projects and who uses problem definition to harness the creativity of our community, but also the strategic imagination of his teams over at Coty. And he's going to talk to you about how you put this into practice inside organisations.
Thank you, Nikki. Just to reintroduce myself, my name's Ian McCarthy. I head up marketing in the UK and Ireland for a company called Coty. Coty is a beauty company. You may or may not have heard of it. We're the number 2 manufacturer in colour cosmetics with brands such as Rimmel and Max Factor. And we're the number 2 manufacturer in fragrances with brands like Burberry, Gucci, Hugo Boss and Marc Jacobs. And my remit is I look after 25 brands in total. So quite a broad portfolio. And as a category and as a company, it's fun and it's frantic and there's a lot going on. But part of my role is to bring agility and to bring focus in order to be successful. And critically, when you can see what's coming, you can be better prepared on where you need to get to. So to use the analogy, you use the storm to move you in the right direction rather than being completely wiped out by it. At Coty, we've started to use problem definition. This is a real practical example. And for us, it allows us to rise above the storm of the category. It allows us to rise above the noise that we hear on a daily basis. It allows us to rise above the competitive pressures, to anticipate where the category is heading, and it's a really fast-moving category, but importantly, where Coty needs to get to in order to be successful. And the beauty industry is a really interesting one. I love working in beauty. I love working at Coty. It's a fantastic category. But in an industry like beauty, staying ahead of the curve is a matter of life or death. It really moves that quickly. It's a category that moves at the speed of culture. It's frantic. It's a category that's fueled and driven by social media and digital, a lot of which we're not in control of. The consumers are in control of it. And we no longer just project a brand image. I'm sure this industry was a lot easier 30 years ago when you had TV and you had print and you had out of door. Our consumers are content creators and they're also media channels in their own right. So we sell to fluid generations that demand and create content at breakneck speed. It means the category is really, really noisy, and we've got to cut through that noise and understand what the signal is. An example of this is Rihanna. So if you think back to the most recent Super Bowl in February of this year, I think it's still the most widely watched live televised event. Rihanna was the halftime concert. She was the focus. And she intentionally and purposefully paused during her concert to apply her own color cosmetics, Fenty Beauty. I mean, it was absolutely genius. You couldn't buy that from a media perspective. And it changed the beauty landscape in an instant. This is big, but there are many other exceptions as well. So these small moments can have a significant impact on the category, and we need to understand how we're impacting the category, but how we respond to this as well. You know, there was a quote that the Super Bowl interrupted the Rihanna concert, and for me, I think the Rihanna concert interrupted her applying her Fenty Beauty. The other thing that's happening in the category as well is something called a dupe deluge. This is a downpour that hits the category every single week. So companies are looking at luxury products, at prestige products that you'd buy in flagship stores, and they're creating mass market equivalents of it. And then fueling that with social media, fueling that with digital, fueling that with virality, and it can impact the category significantly. So we need to have a clear point of view. We need to understand why the consumers are attracted to this and what's Coty's response. What's our strategy going to be on this dupe deluge? And the other one is D2C, right? I won't preach about D2C. It's not something that's specific to beauty. But we see the barriers to entry never being lower in beauty. It doesn't take that much to set up a beauty company now compared to 10, 20, 30 years ago. The innovation rate has never been higher, and it increases every single week. Interestingly, the failure rate has also never been higher. So a lot of it doesn't work, right? But people believe they have the next new brand. But there are some exceptions that work because they have the right consumer insight, they have the right business model, and that really challenges the category. So again, Coty, we need to understand what D2C, what the role is of D2C within our business, but also how do we respond to those category pressures. And tech tornado, it feels like a bit of a tech tornado here today. But the platform adoption increases every single day, whether it's AI or AR or VR or the new app that's being launched today. And the way that we communicate to different generations is in a constant state of flux. We can create a strategy, we can create a plan, we can create an activation, we can launch that, and it's already old news because it's moved on. The way that we talk to consumers, the way that we engage with consumers, the way that we sell to consumers is changing every single day. Now, this isn't a problem. This is where my marketing team back at Coty get really, really excited. This is the adrenaline rush. because they can find new solutions to existing problems and use technology to make it happen. So beauty is really exciting, but it's not for the faint-hearted. And what problem definition has done is it's allowed us to cut through the noise and act with purpose, but act with purpose at speed. And that's really, really important. So these are the 5 key areas. If you ask me, how has problem definition helped Coty over the last 18 months, this is it. So it allows us to act with focus and intent. So 25 brands, 80 different marketeers, global and local teams. It allows us to create that focus, which is important. It gives us a North Star. So everyone in the organization knows where we need to be headed to. And all of those short-term actions need to get us to where we need to get to. Less noise, more signal. Diversity isn't just a sticker, but it's an essential ingredient. I've got one slide on that. But it's really baked into Coty's purpose, vision, and values. And problem definition has been a really intentional tool to allow us to embed that in the organization. Align stakeholders in a matrix organization. We have global teams, we have local teams. There's probably lots of people listening that understand the tension between those two. There always has to be a natural, healthy tension, but we found that problem definition creates more alignment between those two groups. And for anyone that works in the finance department, maybe not here today, but it saves time, it saves money, and it saves resources. So it's proven that we have a stronger return on investment if we spend that critical time up front defining what the problem is. So focus. Problem definition gives us a focus. Beauty is a trend-led, fashion-led industry with huge amounts of creativity. When I introduce new marketeers into Coty, they want to be creative, and I love that passion. I love that passion for creativity. But we need to ensure that we channel that creativity in areas that really make a difference. We're not being creative for the sake of being creative. So problem definition gives us the focus to allow creativity to flourish and to work. And it allows us to use our talents, such as a wonderful Priyanka Chopra-Jonas, our brand purpose, all of those assets in a meaningful and authentic way. So it's about having the right message with the right audience at the right time with the right level of impact. And North Star, I mentioned it, but beauty is exceptionally fast moving. It's faster moving than FMCG. In preparation for this, I went back to our databases of sales, category sales that go through the till in the UK. And in the past 12 months, there have been 2,500 new products launched in colour cosmetics in the UK. 2,500 in 12 months. I mean, it's just phenomenal, right? It's an absolute blur. And me and my team can get caught up in that, caught up in innovation, that we have to go faster, we have to be more frequent, we have to drive more. And it takes up time, and it takes up resource, and it takes up a lot of money. The churn rates are extremely high. But problem definition gives us a real clear signal. More signal and less noise. And it gives us the confidence to set our agenda rather than falling into the trap of serving someone else's agenda. Problem definition, how we've experienced at Coty is it can be a really practical tool that celebrates our purpose and our mission. Now, Coty, particularly in marketing, is a league of nations. There's 80 marketeers, and I counted up that we have over 20 different nationalities within those 80 people. And those 80 people come from lots of different backgrounds, lots of different companies, and I love that. I really love that diversity. That's what our shoppers are like, right? We all come from different places and different angles. We don't have a cookie-cutter grad program where everyone speaks the same language, everyone uses the same processes. But so we embrace diversity in all of its forms, but we need to be pulling in the same direction. Similar to creativity, we need that framework for creativity and diversity to really bloom. And we know that companies that embrace diversity are a lot more successful than those that don't. So problem definition helps us to do this at speed. And a matrixed organisation. So I mentioned it before, we got global, we got local, there's always some tension, who's right, who's wrong, who's the smartest thinker. And what problem definition allows us to do is find the problems that are authentic to both the local market while also being authentic to the global teams in their brand story and their purpose. So it can be a uniting idea. And importantly as well, once we've aligned that between global and local, we can use that to judge the work. So when global give us a new campaign with Priyanka Chopra Jonas or a new MPD, we can say, does it solve that problem? And then when we create our local activations with Harrods or Selfridges or Boots and Superdrug, global can look at that and say, does that really help solve that critical problem? And I think that's gold. If it can be a uniting idea, it can be absolutely gold for a corporation. And as mentioned before, it saves time. So we can be busy fools, we can run at solutions, not really understand the problem, and we can waste a lot of time and money, right? We all know that. Changing strategies, changing creatives, it wastes time and money. Rushing to solutions before you really ask yourself, what is the problem? What is the problem that needs to be solved? So press the pause button. It doesn't need to take a lot of time, but it needs critical thinking in order to do that. So putting in the critical thinking time to understand the problem means that we'll be more meaningful in the work that we do and the opportunities that we go after. And final slide for me, but what all this comes down to, regardless of whether you're agency or client or where you work, it's about better connecting with consumers. That's something we all have in common. And in the busy world of cosmetics and fragrance, we can be the beacons in the storm. It's a busy, busy category. We can provide consumers with solutions that meets their aspirations in really authentic ways. We can be the lighthouse identity that allows them to navigate the category. So when you walk into a Boots store and you see 10,000 color cosmetics, how do we stand out? How do we help consumers to navigate? So we can do it in inclusive and authentic ways, but only if we're committed to seeking out the true problems that need to be solved. I'll now hand you back to Nikki, and hopefully there'll be some time at the end for questions.
So I'm hoping that by the end of this, you'll all realise that problem definition is probably something that you really kind of need to embrace inside your organisations. I'm going to give you a last little bit of proof on this. So if you're not convinced, hopefully this little case study will help you. Cast your mind back to the storm of COVID. Probably don't want to, but we were asked to help the Ad Council of America to solve the vaccination problem that they had when we found that vaccine, and everybody thought the clouds had broken open, we were going to get back together and we were going to all move past this terrible time that we'd all been part of. But that wasn't the response of human beings at that time. The response was a very hesitant one, and one that was stopping the vaccine program getting underway and reaching herd immunity. So I think this was probably our biggest test of the framework. We ran a huge workshop with over 40 stakeholders in order to try and help really get under the problems that were being created in vaccination that were incredibly divisive and incredibly political, and stopping people actually stepping up and getting vaccinated. One of the things that we found out from these wonderful people who were so committed to getting America back on its feet was that we found that we were trying to solve the wrong problem. Without this framework, without being able to have this open discussion, bringing in diverse perspectives, we would have tried to solve the problem the way that most health organisations and health campaigns try to solve it, which is to tell you to go and do something, scare the bejesus out of you for not doing it, and hope that the numbers move. This wasn't what we were facing with the vaccine program, and actually what we realised was hesitancy is not a problem. It is just the normal way that we humans respond to something that doesn't feel quite right or that we're a little bit scared of. It's not somebody being difficult or uncooperative. It is just a natural reaction to stop, to look around and ask some questions. By really focusing ourselves on the fact that hesitancy wasn't the problem, And that actually what really was the problem was that people needed reassurance at a grassroots level from people that they trusted. We totally flipped the normal health program and the vaccination program messaging on its head. And we ended up in a really incredible space that brought in different communities, brought in different segments of the population, and used really importantly the voices that those communities could trust to talk to them about the facts about vaccination. But more importantly, leaving that up to the individual to take on that information and make a decision that was about them. And it's Up to You campaign was wildly successful, and we got to that herd immunity just by solving the right problem rather than rushing to the assumption that hesitancy was the problem that needed to be knocked out of the way in order to get us to herd immunity. For some people in this industry, a Cannes Lion is probably the pinnacle of their career. Mine isn't. It's actually seeing Big Bird deliver our vaccine message on Sesame Street. And it solved a really big problem that I'd had since I was about 4 years old. And it's, that's how you get to Sesame Street. I'm really hoping that this little masterclass, the tools that we give you, and really drop us a line because we can send those out to you, have really kind of helped you understand that taking that pause, taking that strategic step back, inviting people into a space in a structured way can really help you decide what the real problem is to focus on, rather than chasing solutions down, wasting a lot of time, wasting a lot of energy, wasting a lot of money, and ultimately not moving yourself forward in the game that you're in.
Hiya, so have we got any questions for our learned guests today on stage?
Hi there, my name's Doug Finlay. I work for Zappy, which is a consumer insight platform. But one of the questions that I've got, probably for both of you, but specifically for Ian, is I heard pace, category pace, creativity, lots of innovation, 2,500 innovations in 6 months. How do you bring the voice of the consumer into that at the pace that you need to deliver what you have to deliver out to the market?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. Do we do it perfectly? Probably not. But we have an insights team that I've built up that use multiple data sources. Some of them will be long-term, Nielsen, NPD, Kantar, brand equity tracking, campaign awareness. But we started to move to far more agile ways of driving insights, such as real-life communities, right? Where you can create communities, you can ask them questions. Hey, it's Friday night. Which product do you wish you had in your makeup bag? To ask some questions to say, we're thinking about launching these products. What do you think? So I think we're not there yet, but I think it's a combination of the traditional, but also using technology to get real-time insights, a finger on the pulse. And I think that's where it's going to go, because I think that speeds up the process. It takes a lot less time, it costs a lot less money, and we can act with agility. And that's a challenge for big companies. If you're a startup with 3 people, you can do it. For us, it's far more difficult. But I think you've raised a good point, is making sure that the consumer is at the center of it, rather than rushing and then forgetting what the consumer really needs.
Great. Do we have any more questions? Cool, guys. All right. Well, thank you so much. Nikki Crumpton from BeenThereDoneThat and Ian McCarthy from Coty. Guys, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.